A billionaire CEO walks into her luxury car dealership and gets rejected, but not because she couldn't afford it, because of the color of her skin. What she does next will shake an entire industry to its core. This is the story of Victoria Bennett, a woman who built Bennett Automotive from nothing into America's most respected luxury car brand. A brand that promised one thing above all: respect for everyone. But when a shocking letter reached her desk, a letter from a loyal customer named Marcus Reed, accusing her Westbridge showroom of racial discrimination, Victoria knew what she had to do. She wasn't going to send a statement. She wasn't going to call a manager. She wasn't going to ask for apologies. She was going there herself, undercover, to see with her own eyes what happens when power is stripped away, and a black woman walks into a showroom built on her name. And what happened next would not just change a company. It would change everything. Victoria Bennett sat quietly in her corner office in New York City. Behind her, the skyline stretched endlessly, a view reserved for people who had fought impossible battles. She wasn't born into this world. She carved her way into it. But the letter on her desk made all that feel meaningless. Dear Bennett Automotive, last week, I visited your Westbridge showroom, excited to finally purchase the car I'd worked years to afford. But the experience left me humiliated. Despite my financial readiness, despite being a loyal supporter of your brand, I was treated as if I didn't belong. Meanwhile, a white customer, dressed no differently than I was offered champagne, test drives, and respect. It broke my heart because I believed Bennett Automotive was different. Signed, Marcus Reed. Victoria sat in silence, staring at the letter, feeling a quiet anger, steady, cold. She picked up the phone. Brian, she said, her trusted assistant of over a decade. I need a flight to Westbridge. No security detail. No announcement. No corporate bookings. Brian hesitated. This is personal, Victoria added. I understand, he replied. That night, Victoria packed a simple outfit, a plain white shirt, dark jeans, sneakers, no designer labels, no jewelry, no sign of wealth. Tomorrow, she wasn't going as the CEO of a billion-dollar empire. She was going as a woman, walking into her showroom to see the truth, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what she might find. Victoria Bennett stepped out of the modest rental car she had picked up at the Westbridge airport. No luxury chauffeur, no signature Bennett Automotive vehicle, just a simple gray sedan blending into the ordinary parking lot of her showroom. She tightened the strap of her plain leather crossbody bag, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just a visit. This was a test of her people, a test of her vision, a test of herself. Westbridge was supposed to be different. Victoria had built Bennett Automotive from nothing, brick by brick, sale by sale. Her dream wasn't just to sell luxury cars. It was to redefine what luxury meant, to prove that elegance wasn't reserved for the privileged few, to make sure that anyone, regardless of race, background, or appearance, who worked hard enough to earn their success would be treated with dignity. But the letter from Marcus Reed had shattered that belief. And today, standing here unnoticed in front of her glass and steel empire, she would find out if that dream had been lost. Victoria adjusted her simple white blouse, worn jeans, and clean sneakers. No designer logos, no jewelry, no markers of wealth, just another customer. The moment she stepped through the automatic doors, the atmosphere shifted. The cool, climate-controlled air hummed softly, but the warmth that should have greeted her was nowhere to be found. The reception desk was manned by a young man who barely glanced her way. His polished smile flickered for only the couple seated behind her, a white couple dressed no better than she was, yet instantly offered chilled water and an enthusiastic welcome. Victoria kept walking. Her footsteps echoed slightly across the marble floor as she approached the gleaming rows of vehicles, each one a masterpiece of engineering and design. That's when he appeared. Stephen Grayson, tall, impeccably groomed, dark suit tailored to perfection, a man who had spent decades mastering not just the art of sales but the silent language of power. He clocked her presence with a glance that lasted half a second too long. Not welcome, not curiosity, assessment, judgment. "Ma'am," he greeted, his tone smooth but hollow. "May I help you?" Victoria gave him a warm, neutral smile. "Yes," she replied. "I'm interested in the Bennett Monarch, the Platinum Edition." Stephen's pause was subtle, but she saw it. The glance at her sneakers, the flicker toward her plain bag, the calculation. "That particular model," Stephen began, "is typically available for viewing by appointment only. It's highly exclusive." Victoria tilted her head slightly. "Oh, I wasn't aware appointments were necessary for viewing a car on the showroom floor." His lips twitched into what might have passed for a smile. "For customers seriously considering purchase, we recommend a personalized consultation." Behind them, the same white couple was now being led toward a luxury model, offered champagne glasses, and ushered into a private lounge. Victoria's eyes lingered there for only a moment, long enough. "Of course," she said quietly. "I understand." Stephen gave a polite nod. "Perhaps you'd like to look at some of our other models, ones more accessible for first-time buyers." The words landed like a slap dressed in silk. Victoria didn't flinch. She didn't argue. That wasn't why she was here. Instead, she stepped aside, moving toward the edge of the showroom, settling quietly into one of the waiting chairs along the side. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. She was here to watch, to listen, to see not just what was said to her, but what was done to others. And as she sat there, invisible in the very company she had built, Victoria Bennett began to witness the pattern unfold. A system, a practice, a culture she had sworn would never exist under her name. And yet here it was, alive, thriving, right under her roof. But what Stephen Grayson didn't know, what he couldn't see past his prejudice, was that the woman he had just dismissed so easily was the owner of it all, and she was just getting started. Victoria Bennett sat down slowly on the sleek leather bench tucked away near the back of the Bennett Automotive showroom. The spot gave her a clear, unfiltered view of everything. She crossed one leg over the other, keeping her expression neutral, just another customer waiting, invisible to those who had already judged her unworthy. The cold, polished atmosphere of the Westbridge showroom wrapped around her like glass, flawless on the surface, but sharp if you looked too closely. And Victoria? She was looking very closely. From where she sat, she could see Stephen Grayson, the showroom manager, laughing and chatting with an older white couple dressed casually in polo shirts and linen pants. The man had a loud, easy confidence about him. Within minutes, Stephen was waving a junior salesman over, nodding toward the luxury Bentley the couple had barely glanced at. Victoria's eyes narrowed. No ID check, no hesitation, no question about whether they could afford it. Service here didn't seem to be about professionalism. It was about profiling. Minutes passed. Then another customer entered, a middle-aged black man in a tailored gray suit, his shoes polished, his watch understated but expensive. Victoria watched the shift in energy from the staff. The young salesman assigned to greet him looked polite but distant. His shoulders stiffened as he approached, hands folded in front of him like a barrier. The man asked about the same Bentley. The salesman gave a rehearsed smile and casually suggested a more affordable model at the far end of the showroom. Victoria's stomach tightened. It wasn't about money here. It was about perception. She noticed patterns, clear and deliberate. White customers, no matter how casually dressed, were offered test drives, complimentary champagne, and brochures laid out like a red carpet. Customers of color, no matter how polished, were either ignored or quietly steered away from the flagship models. Victoria's heart was steady, but her mind raced. This wasn't a rogue employee problem. This was a culture problem. And cultures were shaped, then enforced by leaders like Stephen Grayson. But then, something else caught her eye. Near the reception desk stood a young woman in Early 20s with sharp auburn hair tied in a ponytail and a beige blazer neatly pressed. Her name tag read, Emily Carter. Emily wasn't acting like the others. Victoria noticed the way her eyes followed the uncomfortable exchange between the black customer and the young salesman. There was a flicker of hesitation in her posture, a quiet discomfort, like someone biting their tongue out of fear, not agreement. Emily's gaze moved subtly across the showroom, watching how the sales team instinctively gravitated to certain customers, the ones who fit their unspoken mold. Victoria's instinct kicked in. This girl, she wasn't like the rest. She was surviving in a system she didn't believe in, and that made her dangerous. Not to Victoria, but to the toxic culture Stephen had built. Victoria leaned back against the leather seat, exhaling slowly. This was why she had come undercover. Not to fire people in public, not to humiliate them, but to see the truth unfiltered. Because only when you saw how the world worked, when no one thought you had power, could you fix what was truly broken. Across the showroom, Emily hesitated again, this time as a middle-aged black woman approached the reception desk, asking about the latest luxury SUV. Victoria watched Emily's first instinct, kindness. She took a step forward to assist, only to freeze as Stephen Grayson appeared behind her. His subtle head tilt wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It was a silent command. Emily bit her lip. Then, slowly, almost regretfully, she turned away, leaving the woman standing alone, awkward and unwelcome. Victoria's jaw clenched. This wasn't incompetence. This was policy. Victoria sat there, heart calm, mind sharp, as the scene unfolded exactly as she suspected. And then, just before Emily disappeared behind a display wall, she looked back. Her eyes met Victoria's. For just a second, it was enough. Victoria didn't look away. Neither did Emily. Two women, two worlds. But soon, the same fight. Victoria knew what she had to do next. She would wait, watch, and when the time was right, approach Emily Carter, the quiet heart in a building built on exclusion. Every revolution starts with one person willing to tell the truth, and tonight, Victoria was going to offer her that chance. Victoria Bennett sat quietly at a small table in the cafe across from the Westbridge showroom, a simple place with floor-to-ceiling windows, giving her a clear view of the glass facade that concealed years of prejudice behind its polished luxury. She stirred her tea slowly, watching the reflection of herself in the window, not as the CEO of Bennett Automotive, but as just another woman trying to find the truth. And across that truth was someone like Emily Carter. Victoria had seen enough to know Emily wasn't like the others. The hesitation in her eyes, the subtle glances she cast toward customers being turned away, the small moments where her hands fidgeted, betraying a conscience fighting against silence. Victoria waited. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, Emily Carter stepped out of the showroom. Her beige uniform blazer looked freshly pressed, but her steps were anything but steady. Emily crossed the street nervously, her ponytail swaying behind her like a rope barely holding herself together. Victoria raised a calm hand. Emily saw her, hesitated, then slowly walked over. She didn't sit right away. Her eyes darted around, the look of someone who had spent too long fearing the wrong word at the wrong time. Victoria smiled, not with power, not with intimidation, but with something rarer in the world Emily had lived in, understanding. "You don't have to stay long," Victoria said softly, "but I think you know why I asked you here." Emily swallowed hard, lowering her voice. "I shouldn't be doing this." "I know," Victoria replied, "but you're here anyway." That made Emily pause. She sat down, slowly, her hands clenching around a folded napkin like it was her last line of defense. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. And then the dam broke. "I see it every day," Emily whispered. "They think we don't notice. But it's not just a few customers getting bad service. It's a system." Victoria stayed silent, letting the words pour out. "They tell us the profile within minutes. Who's worth our time? Who's a qualified buyer? But it's never about money. It's always about... Her voice cracked. It's about how they look. Victoria's gaze never left hers. And if you don't follow that system, Emily gave a bitter laugh. You get isolated, ignored, or worse, fired. A flicker of shame crossed her face. I didn't say anything before because I need this job. My mom's medical bills. I can't afford to be brave. Victoria nodded slowly. Bravery isn't about being loud, she said quietly. It's about doing what's right when it costs you something. Emily looked up, her eyes shimmering with something rare. Hope. Victoria reached into her pocket, pulling out a small, elegant business card. Simple. No title. Just a name and a direct number. Emily, I didn't build Bennett Automotive just to sell cars. I built it to break walls people like us were never meant to walk through. She slid the card across the table. If you want to be part of changing this, call me. For a long moment, Emily didn't move. Then, with trembling fingers, she took the card. She tucked it into her blazer pocket, like it weighed more than anything she had ever carried. Thank you, she whispered, not just for the offer, but for seeing her. Victoria smiled. She didn't need loud victories. She didn't need applause. She needed people like Emily. And in this quiet corner of a cafe, far away from glass showrooms and boardrooms filled with egos, a revolution was already beginning, not with power, but with truth. Emily Carter sat alone in her tiny apartment that night. The hum of the city outside was barely loud enough to drown out the war inside her head. The business card sat quietly on the edge of her kitchen table, like it had been waiting for her all this time. Victoria Bennett. No title, no company name, just a number and an unspoken promise. If you're ready for change, call me. But change wasn't simple, not for someone like Emily. This job, for all its flaws, paid her bills, paid for her mother's medication. It was the first stable thing she'd had in years. She stared at the phone in her hand. Stephen Grayson's voice echoed in her memory, cold, sharp, warning them all. We don't waste time on people who don't belong here. That wasn't customer service. That was control. And for the first time, she was done being controlled. Her thumb hovered over the number on the card. Her heart pounded. Then, before fear could stop her, she hit call. The line rang once, twice. Then came a voice, calm, steady, almost like Victoria had been expecting this moment all along. This is Victoria. Emily's voice trembled. It's me, Emily, from the showroom. Silence. Then the gentlest reply, I'm glad you called. Emily exhaled a shaky breath, the fear and weight of years spilling out all at once. I don't know why I did, Emily whispered. I think you do, Victoria answered. There was something about the way she said it, like she wasn't judging, like she knew exactly how hard this was. Emily closed her eyes. I need to talk, but somewhere private. I don't trust anyone at the showroom. Victoria didn't hesitate. There's a cafe on Jefferson Street. Quiet place. Tomorrow, noon. I'll be there. The next day felt like the longest of Emily's life. Every second inside Bennett Automotive felt heavier. Stephen Grayson was sharper than ever, pacing the showroom like a predator sensing weakness. But Emily wasn't afraid anymore. Not of him, not of this place. Not when truth was finally on her side. She arrived early at the cafe. It wasn't fancy. Brick walls, wooden tables, the kind of place nobody important went, which was exactly why she felt safe. Victoria was already there, sitting in the corner, dressed in the same plain clothes from the showroom. But something about her was unmistakable. It wasn't wealth. It was presence. Emily sat down slowly. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Victoria let the silence stay, like she knew Emily needed to find her voice. And then quietly it came. It's worse than you think. Victoria didn't flinch. Tell me? And Emily did. She told her everything. How Stephen had created an unwritten system, a script they all followed but never dared admit. How employees were trained to profile customers based on appearance, not financial worth. How people of color were routinely redirected, dismissed, or steered toward lower-end models, all in the name of efficiency. Victoria listened, every word, her face calm, but her eyes burning with something Emily hadn't seen in anyone at Bennett Automotive for a long time. Righteous anger, but not wild, not reckless, controlled, focused, the kind that built change. Emily shook her head, regret washing over her. I hate that I didn't stand up to him sooner. Victoria's voice softened. You stood up now. That's what matters. Then came the question Emily had been dreading. Would you be willing to stand with me if I move forward with this? Emily froze. I could lose everything. Victoria nodded, like she understood more than Emily knew. I won't ask you to do anything you're not ready for. But if you want to be part of this change, really part of it, I'll be here. For the first time in months, maybe years, Emily felt like she could breathe. Like this fight wasn't hers alone. She looked Victoria in the eyes. I want to help. Victoria smiled, the kind of smile that didn't just say, thank you. It said, welcome to the fight. Victoria Bennett sat quietly in the back of a rental SUV, parked a short distance from the Westbridge showroom. Her eyes remained fixed on the glass facade of the dealership, its sleek architecture almost mocking, a place that promised luxury to all, but only delivered it to a chosen few. Beside her, Brian, her trusted assistant, waited silently for instructions. It has to be someone they've never seen before, Victoria murmured. Brian nodded, already understanding. I know just a man, he said with a half smile. His longtime friend, Andrew Foster, a man whose presence alone commanded attention, mid-40s, tall, sharp-featured, carrying himself with effortless confidence. Andrew wasn't a billionaire, but he didn't need to be. The way he walked, the way he dressed, navy blazer, polished shoes, expensive watch, everything about him radiated quiet wealth. Victoria glanced at Brian. Let's see if Stephen Grayson can resist that. An hour later, Andrew Foster arrived. Victoria, from her hidden vantage point, watched the entire scene unfold. As Andrew stepped through the glass doors of the showroom, everything changed. There was no hesitation, no dismissive glances, no polite indifference. Instead, immediate attention. Stephen Grayson himself broke away from his conversation, striding across the floor with a kind of practiced charm reserved only for those who belonged. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Bennett Automotive, Stephen said, his tone dipped in honey. Andrew smiled casually. I'm looking to purchase something special. Perhaps the new Bennett Hyperion series? Stephen's face lit up like a salesman who had just struck gold. Of course, sir. Right this way. Can I offer you an espresso while we discuss your options? It was almost theatrical. Victoria watched, her heart steady but her mind boiling with clarity. Here it was. Proof. Everything she had suspected. Confirmed in front of her eyes. Minutes ago, this man had denied her the decency of basic customer service. Now he practically groveled. Andrew played his role perfectly. He asked specific questions about features, requested to view the luxury models in detail, and Stephen obliged with a smile that barely hid his eagerness to close a deal. Within moments, Stephen led Andrew toward the vehicle Victoria had been denied access to just a day before, the Bennett Hyperion. It sat under soft showroom lights, its polished body gleaming, like a symbol of everything wrong with this place. Victoria's phone buzzed. A message from Brian, recording everything. We have it all. A slow, almost sad smile tugged at the corner of Victoria's lips. This wasn't just about Stephen Grayson anymore. This was about the system he represented. A system that didn't see human worth. Only skin color, only status, only appearances. 20 minutes later, Andrew exited the showroom, his casual expression masking the storm that Victoria knew was about to hit. He slid into the back seat beside her. Well, he said with dry amusement, They practically offered me the keys on a silver platter. Victoria exhaled slowly, her voice calm but resolute. They showed us exactly who they are. And that was all she needed. This wasn't just hearsay. This wasn't speculation. This was undeniable evidence. That night, back in her hotel suite, overlooking the city skyline, Victoria watched the video footage Brian had compiled. Every smile from Stephen, every dismissive glance from before, every calculated lie. It was all there, raw, unfiltered, irrefutable. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen as the final frames played out. For a long moment, she sat in silence, not angry, not surprised, just clear-minded. This is not about revenge, she whispered to herself. This is about responsibility. Tomorrow, she would act. Tomorrow, she would begin dismantling everything Stephen Grayson had built on prejudice. Not because she wanted to destroy him, but people like Emily Carter deserved a world where they didn't have to be afraid to do the right thing. Victoria's reflection in the window stared back at her, steady, powerful, unbreakable. Tomorrow was coming, and this time, she wouldn't be undercover. She would be undeniable. The next morning, the air inside the Bennett Automotive showroom felt heavier than usual, like a storm hanging in the distance, moments before it breaks. Stephen Grayson sat alone in his glass-walled office, eyes fixed on the email glowing on his screen. No greeting, no signature, just a link, a video. He clicked, and there it was, undeniable. Crystal clear footage of him shaking hands with Andrew Foster, the white, well-dressed client he had catered to like royalty, after turning away Victoria Bennett just hours earlier, treating her like an unwelcome stranger. Stephen's jaw clenched, his heart pounded in his ears. Someone had set him up, and worse, someone inside this building had helped him. His phone buzzed violently on the desk. It was the regional director from corporate. "Stephen, we need to talk. Now!" The voice was cold. No space for excuses. Within minutes, every department head received a discreet message. Emergency management meeting, 15 minutes. Stephen's mind raced. He stormed out his office, scanning the floor, his sharp eyes searching for cracks in loyalty, for signs of betrayal. His stare landed on Emily Carter. She was standing by the reception desk, speaking softly to a customer, her posture stiff, but her eyes were calm, almost resolved. Stephen's instinct sharpened. His gut screamed. It was her. As the management team gathered in the sleek conference room, Stephen stood at the head of the table, icy calm on the surface, firestorm boiling underneath. "We have a situation," he began, his voice low, his words cutting like glass. His managers shifted uncomfortably. Stephen paced slowly, his shadow slicing across the polished floor. "Someone inside the showroom is working against us." He let the weight of the words settle. "This footage was recorded yesterday," he continued, "and sent directly to corporate." Faces paled, eyes darted. No one spoke. Stephen turned his glare toward them. "I want to know who was it." Silence. Dead, suffocating silence. "And let me be clear," his voice dropped lower, "more dangerous. If I find out who's been talking, your career won't just end here. It'll end everywhere." Across the showroom, Emily's hands trembled slightly as she wiped down a counter, trying to appear calm. But inside, fear churned like a storm. She knew she was a target now. Later that afternoon, she slipped away to the employee break room, her heart pounding like a drumbeat in her chest. She pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over Victoria Bennett's contact. She pressed call. It rang only once. "Emily?" Victoria's voice was steady, calm, but prepared. "He knows," Emily whispered. "Stephen knows someone leaked the footage, and I think he's coming for me." There was a pause. Victoria's voice softened, but there was steel beneath it. "You did the right thing," she said. "Stay calm. Don't react. Don't confess. They don't have proof. They're bluffing. Emily swallowed hard, closing her eyes. I'm scared, she whispered. Victoria didn't hesitate. I know you are, she replied. But I promise you, I won't let him destroy you. Meanwhile, in his office, Stephen Grayson sat back, staring out at the showroom floor. His world, his perfect system, was unraveling. He had built his power through control, through fear. But someone was breaking through. Victoria Bennett. His lips curled into a cold sneer. If she wanted a war, he was ready to fight. But little did Stephen know, Victoria wasn't finished. She was just getting started. And the next move, it wouldn't just shake the showroom. The sun was barely breaking to the morning haze over Westbridge when Victoria Bennett walked into the grand conference room of Bennett Automotive headquarters. But this time, she wasn't undercover. She was walking in as herself, the CEO, the woman who built this empire, and the woman who was about to change it forever. All around the room sat executives, board members, and advisors, the same people who once admired her for her brilliance in business, but now watched her with unease. Because this wasn't about sales reports or market expansions. This was about the truth. Victoria stood at the front of the room, her voice calm, steady, but every word cut through the silence like a blade. We built Bennett Automotive on a promise, she began. Luxury without prejudice, excellence without exclusion. But what I witnessed inside my own showroom in Westbridge was a betrayal of everything we stand for. A ripple moved through the room. Some shifted uncomfortably, others lowered their gaze. Without hesitation, Victoria gestured to her assistant, Brian, who dimmed the lights and started playing the video they had recorded. There it was, undeniable. Stephen Grayson smiling and shaking hands with Andrew Foster, a white man they treated like royalty. The same showroom where she, the founder of the company, had been turned away in plain clothes. As the footage rolled, the weight in the room grew unbearable. No one spoke. No one dared. Until the screen faded to black. Victoria let the silence settle, heavy, suffocating. Before continuing, "This is not a mistake," she said. "This is a system. Built, enforced, protected." Her voice dropped, lower now, more personal. "And it ends today." The board was forced to act. Jonathan Hale, the chairman, cleared his throat nervously. "I believe we need to proceed with an immediate vote regarding the future of Mr. Grayson." Victoria met his eyes, and he nodded, knowing resistance was pointless. When the votes were cast, the result was swift, unanimous. Stephen Grayson was officially terminated from Bennett Automotive. That afternoon, Victoria stood on the stage of a packed press conference, her heart steady, her purpose clear. The world was watching. News cameras surrounded her. Reporters held their breath. She didn't hide behind corporate language. She didn't spin the truth. She owned it. "Discrimination has no place in our company," she declared. "And while I am proud of what we built, I refuse to let our legacy be stained by injustice." Then, with resolve, she announced the sweeping reforms: mandatory anti-discrimination training, independent oversight committees, a complete restructuring of customer service policies. And one more thing, I am proud to announce that Emily Carter, a young woman who showed courage and integrity when it mattered most, will be promoted to lead our new cultural values and ethics division. A wave of applause erupted through the room. And somewhere backstage, Emily watched through misty eyes, unable to believe how much her life had changed. But Victoria wasn't finished. She looked directly into the cameras and sent a message not just to her company, but to every industry watching. Real luxury is not in the price tag. Real power is not in status. Real leadership is choosing to do what's right, even when no one is watching. As the press conference ended and reporters rushed to share the story, Victoria stepped away quietly. Her work wasn't over, but this battle, this victory, it would echo far beyond the walls of any showroom. It would remind the world that change always starts with one voice, one action, one leader willing to stand alone. until others find the courage to stand with her. Victoria Bennett stood by the glass window of her office that evening, the city lights of Westbridge glowing beneath her like distant stars. But tonight, they didn't look the same, because tonight, everything had changed, not just for Bennett Automotive, not just for Emily Carter, but for every single person who had ever been told, "You don't belong here." Victoria knew something that every true leader must face sooner or later. It's easy to lead when the room agrees with you. It's easy to lead when the world claps for you. But the real test, the real weight of leadership, is when you have to stand up alone, when no one is cheering, when speaking the truth costs you everything comfortable, everything easy. She thought about Emily, a young woman who chose courage over silence. She thought about the customers who had walked away in humiliation, unseen, unheard, until today. And she thought about herself, the little girl from the south side of Chicago who once sold sandwiches at street corners just to help her mother pay rent. No one gave her a seat at the table. She built it herself. And now, she was building something bigger than cars. She was building a culture where dignity was not a luxury. It was a standard. Victoria turned back to her desk, a simple quote framed in silver, words that stayed with her through every battle, every victory, every scar. Power means nothing if you use it only for yourself. She smiled quietly because she knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. And for you, watching this story tonight, maybe you've seen injustice where you work. Maybe you've stayed silent because you were scared. Or maybe you've been the one turned away, unseen, underestimated. But remember this, real change does not begin in boardrooms. Real change begins with you, with one voice, with one act of courage. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. And when you dare to stand up for what's right, you won't just change a company. You might just change the world. What do you think? Would you have fought like Victoria did? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder. Leadership is not about power. It's about purpose. And this world needs leaders like you more than ever.